Today's story was written by Reddit user Random3x. Prelate Admiral Vectus was called to the bridge of his Calante-class destroyer, the flagship of the Imperial Navy of the Calixuus. He had been told by a nervous-looking officer that they were being hailed by the admiral of a human naval force. He couldn't help but exhale a weary sigh. The Empire had started a war with the humans over resource rights of a sector, and the battles had developed since then. Much to the surprise of the Calixuus, the humans were putting up a harder fight than anyone expected. The Admiral himself had always been a proponent that the Empire's military forces had grown too complacent. He and many other military academy graduates had even revelled in the chance to gain battle honours. But to be woken up in the middle of the night cycle to address a human admiral was tiring as could be. Admiral? I apologise for waking you at such an hour, his snivelling first mate said. The man had a disposition that would make even a small fluffy harung seem as valiant as a lizard. I was told a human admiral had called up on open comms. Yes, sir. They are patiently waiting on hold, he confirmed. Sensors officer, can we detect them? No, sir. The sensors are detecting many relays. The cowards are likely not even in the system. Typical, the Admiral muttered. Humans never fought in direct attacks and continued with what they call guerrilla tactics, often ambushing and running away before their honourable warriors could retaliate. Though it pained him, the Admiral did have to commend them, as the tactic did work. His calls for them to use the tactic in return had been dismissed out of hand by the War Council. Confident in the idea that the Empire would whittle down any human resistance given enough time. Did the human explain his purpose for contacting us? No, sir, the comms officer replied. He only said he would only speak to the highest ranking officer. Suspicious, the Admiral muttered as he stroked his chin Lexos. Bring it up and I shall ascertain their purpose. At this order, a holographic display lit up before him, and there in a projected commander's seat was a human. To his eyes, the human race appeared frightfully ugly. Something about them not genetically engineering symmetry disturbed many of the inexperienced of his crew. He, however, was an academy graduate, so he wouldn't let the hideousness of the human projected before him bring up his protein packet. Are you the highest ranking officer? The human asked. Indeed, I am Prelate Admiral Vectus of the Empire, one of the few exalted amongst my race, the Admiral replied. Ah, perfect. Our intel told us a bigwig was with this battle group, but hard to tell. Confirm with your peepers and all, the human replied, flashing his teeth in a threat gesture. Why are you contacting us? To surrender, I suppose? The Admiral asked. Oh, heavens no, the human replied as he chuckled. We have a few new toys and wanted to show them off, but you don't use a cannon to kill a mouse. The human held both his grasping appendages upwards and moved his shoulders in an up and down motion. The Admiral remembered a part in his enemy studies that identified this gesture as a shrug, which roughly meant I guess. So you wish to battle? Yes, I suppose we do. Mind if we have a good old scrap? The human asked as it balled up its grasping appendages and made circular motions. Very well, we shall engage you in a proper fight, none of your attack and run, the Admiral replied, hoping to gain the honour of the first real fight of the war. Of course, no running. We have our new toys. Between you and me, when we use them, we can't run for a little while, the human explained as it tilted its head and closed one of its eyes. So where shall we face in glorious battle? Oh, don't worry, we'll come to you, he replied as communications abruptly cut off. Quickly realising the meaning behind his words, the Admiral slammed a button to call high alert to the entire battle group. The humans were on their way to attack them. Sir, we are detecting gravitational anomalies, the sensors officer declared. This was good. It meant they were using their FTL to drop into system. It seemed the human was true to his words. In a few of the wrecks they had studied, the engineers had confirmed that human FTL drives were horribly inefficient. They required a long recharge time between uses, and the return to normal space could cause severe gravitational anomalies that they could easily detect. This was part of why the humans had stuck with ambushes. "What is the heading?" the Admiral asked the comms officer. "Straight ahead," the sensors officer replied, sounding panicked. "Sir, get the shields up! They are dropping in directly!" The sensors officer was unable to finish his sentence as a dozen human battlecruisers appeared directly above the Admiral's fleet. It was as he looked on, he couldn't help but feel horror. It was common knowledge that FTL travel had to have the gravity compensated for. It was why the Calixuous used anti-reality bubbles. But this human had actually weaponized their return to normal space. Appearing above each of his ships were micro-black holes caused by the infinite mass the human ships had generated with their own FTL drives. His escort ships had all been shredded, while the human ships that, through some insane engineering, had shunted the micro-black holes behind their engines were now charging towards his undefended ship. Worse still, they were above his ship orientated by his perspective upside down. Looking at the ship approaching his, he could see the cannons were already pointing upwards, and the time it would take to reorientate his own point defense cannons would be too long. "Sir, they have begun shredding our armor," the engineering officer declared. Though the reality is, he didn't need to. The view outside his bridge was a sight to behold. Those humans weaponized their own substandard FTL drives. I wonder if we will actually stand a chance now. The Admiral's last words were all that were able to be recovered from the wreckage of his flagship. This battle, which was more of a one-sided slaughter, would become known as the turning point in the war between humanity and the Calixuous.